For my project, I chose to do a report on The Princess Bride by William Goldman, mostly because I didn't want to read a new book. The book tells the story of Princess Buttercup and Wesley, the man formerly known as the Dread Pirate Roberts, as they fumble their way through pseudo-historical Europe, attempting to overcome the machinations of the evil Prince Humperdinck, a hilariously named and cartoonishly evil lord who has claimed Buttercup as his bride. In the beginning of the book, Wesley was Buttercup's farmhand, and she fell in love with him after a rather infuriating length of time for anyone who is used to the quick and easy summary provided by the movie. Wesley goes to sea to seek his fortune, and Buttercup receives word that his ship was taken by the Dread Pirate Roberts, a pirate who is well known for never taking anyone alive. 5 years pass, and Buttercup is proposed to by Prince Humperdinck, the heir to the throne of Florin, Buttercup's home country. To make a long story short, Buttercup is captured by 3 men, 2 of whom have interesting backstories, who were hired to start a war between Florin and its neighboring country. While escaping the country, the kidnappers are pursued by a man in black, who seems to be able to overcome every obstacle he comes across with ease, scaling the cliffs of insanity, defeating Inigo Montoya in swordplay, overcoming Fezzik the Giant in hand-to-hand combat, and besting the Hunchback in a battle of wits, finally reclaiming Buttercup. Buttercup, however, does not want to be reclaimed, and knowing that this man must be the Dread Pirate Roberts, the man who killed her beloved, pushes him into a ravine, upon which time his mask comes off, revealing that in reality it was Wesley the whole time. Reunited, the two make their way through the fire swamp, pursued by Humperdinck, who is described as an expert hunter, and Humperdinck's right-hand man, Count Rugen, the man with 6 fingers. They are captured on the other side of the swamp, and Buttercup is taken back to the castle, while Wesley is taken to Humperdinck's personal zoo to be tortured. They remain this way for 90 days, plenty of time for Buttercup to declare that she will not marry anyone but Wesley, for Inigo to discover the identity of the man who killed his father, for him to realize he needs Wesley's help to get to that man, and for Wesley to die. Sad. Thankfully, he is only mostly dead, and is able to be revived by Miracle Max. Wesley and Inigo, together with Fezzik, storm the palace to save Buttercup and kill Count Rugen, both of which they succeed in. Goldman then leaves whether or not they escape somewhat ambiguous, describing Inigo's wounds opening up and Fezzik taking a wrong turn. He later stated in an interview that he thinks they escaped, an answer which tells us very little on the truth of the matter. The Princess Bride embodies the ongoing struggle between the pretension of the literary world versus the basic love of reading for the sake of enjoyment. Goldman sets himself up as the editor for the writer of the book, claiming that this is merely a story written by some author lost to time. He then goes on to state that he is cutting out the boring parts of the story because they didn't interest him. This is practically a declaration of war against the conventional literary world, wherein authors like J.D. Salinger sacrifice enjoyability for the sake of long-ended metaphorical rants that, while they might leave plenty of room for material for literature classes, are really quite boring. Unfortunately, outside its relatively small cult following, the book has not had nearly as large an impact on the world as its subsequent movie adaptation. However, The Princess Bride remains relevant to this day as a result of its context. The book is one of pure fantasy, written at a time when Tolkien was the predominant force in the genre, and long before J.K. Rowling began to write the Harry Potter series. With fantasy so mainstream in pop culture today, it is difficult to remember that at the time of its release, The Princess Bride was a member of a genre that was not very commonly trodden, so to speak. The common tropes were still being developed, and fantasy was far from the cultural behemoth that it is presently. This makes The Princess Bride's satirical and spoofy approach to its setting interesting to unpack, as Goldman was satirizing a genre that was not even close to commonplace. This makes it all the much more impressive that the book's sarcastic humor, built around the mocking of fantasy tropes, has remained relevant to this day, despite the amount of time the genre would have to evolve. William Goldman's authorial style is an absolute treat. This is best exemplified with the perspective from which the story is told, which changes to fit the situation of the framing device. The book starts in the first person, from the perspective of a young William Goldman reflecting on how his father used to read him this book, The Princess Bride. It is worth noting that Goldman explicitly states how it was this book which reinstated in him a love for reading. Within this flashback, the framing device for the story, Goldman's father reads him the book which we are reading now, and the perspective switches to the omnipotent third person. This reflects the fact that both Goldman's father and Goldman himself are very familiar with the book. It is also explained to the reader that they are reading an abridged version of the story, which reflects how the father is simplifying the story in order to appeal to a young William. This clearly shows how much effort on Goldman's part was put into making his book appeal to younger audiences and those who may not like reading very much at all. It was his goal to introduce reading as a fun activity, and he was careful to frame it as such. To some extent, I have already gone over most of the reasons why The Princess Bride would be an excellent addition to any literary curriculum, so I will just touch on each reason briefly. To To begin with, it is a book that was specifically written to be fun to read for both adults and adolescents alike, regardless of their interest in reading for entertainment. In a time when students tend to have their love for reading tarnished by being forced to read books they have no interest in, The Princess Bride could go a long way towards repairing that unfortunate situation. Goldman, both as the author and the framing device, discusses how he has had difficulty with reading assignments in class, and how this book helped to cure him of that. Students nowadays can empathize with this situation and will find more interest in the book as a result. Secondly, it's just fun. It's a fun book. It manages to be fun without sacrificing literary merit or oversimplifying its story to the point of being a children's book. It is important for students to know that there are more ways to convey a theme than metaphor and symbolism. The Princess Bride stands as an example of a way to convey a message in a way that will actually stick in people's heads, through humor, sarcasm, satire, and paradox. Finally, the movie adaptation is really good. Nothing motivates students to read like the promise of a good movie afterwards. It's well made, funny, appropriate, and most importantly, fairly loyal to its source material. Most movie adaptations fall short in either the category of enjoyability or loyalty. Harry Potter, for example, has a pretty entertaining series of movie adaptations, but book purists like myself find it hard to overlook the blaring differences from the original novels. The Percy Jackson movie adaptations managed to fail in both categories. The Princess Bride, however, is close behind the Lord of the Rings series in terms of loyalty and enjoyability, making it the perfect movie to show in class. And that's everything. Thank you for considering The Princess Bride as an option for a future curriculum, and thank you for not making me take a test at the end of this class. Have a good summer.